that one feel okay? Other? All right, describe single-payer healthcare. What is single-payer healthcare? Should I do my Bernie Sanders impression? Healthcare is a human right. Everyone should have it. That's not good. Kind of does this when we talk, you know. Everyone should say, I'm from Brooklyn, New York. Okay. Single-payer healthcare. What's single-payer healthcare?
Universal.
It's universal healthcare. It means that there are no more private health insurance companies, that all health insurance is provided by a single payer, aka the federal government, right? So it is, you can boil it down to Medicare for all, right? Bernie and Elizabeth Warren's plans. That the current Medicare program, which is widely liked and is very effective, will just be expanded to cover everyone in the US. Okay, so what are some examples, what are some reasons why this is a good idea?
I mean, obvious, but then 100% coverage nationwide.
Yeah, everyone will have health insurance, which is good. Yep. Yep.
Also very expensive.
Also very true. Yeah.
Which is
So,
not another draw.
yeah, no,
but
no,
it's just
it's also expensive, yes. I think we said it was, estimates are that it costs about $34 trillion, right?
Who is it expensive for?
For us, the taxpayers. So if the federal government is going to be paying for health insurance for everyone, estimates are that it costs $34 trillion over 10 years to do that. And that money has to come from somewhere, and it comes from, largely from taxpayers, but it also comes from, depending on the proposal, right? Some of it comes from taxes, some of it comes from new taxes on corporations or the wealthy, or wealth itself, or savings from getting rid of health insurance as it currently is, right? Okay, other cons and pros and cons? So one possible pro is that it's thought that if government controls health insurance, they can negotiate better prices. So going to the hospital might get cheaper, getting prescription drugs might get cheaper, seeing your doctor might get cheaper. All these things might reduce costs because government will have a monopoly on negotiating with providers. So if I go to the hospital now with my Aetna insurance, I will pay more in the end. Not me personally, but my procedure will cost more than if someone with Medicare goes to the hospital, right? Because Medicare negotiates its different rates for how much it will pay for procedures. So if everyone has Medicare, then maybe everyone's going to pay the Medicare rate, and so cost might go down. What's another con?
The argument that it would weaken the ability to negotiate prices, specifically like with medicine, although that would be countered, like more than America is using this medicine.
Right, yeah. So we're missing our, Anna was the one who brought this up last time. She said it might stifle innovation, right? So if drug companies know that they're not going to be able to charge lots and lots of money for drugs they invent because the government is going to force a price on them, they might not have the same incentives to innovate new treatments, right? Same for doctors, right? If doctors know that going into a specialty is not going to earn them lots and lots of money, they may be less likely to go into those specialty practices.
So it'll be less incentive to create new drugs.
Potentially. No one really knows, right? But there is possibly a decrease in incentive to create new treatments, new drugs, right? Drug companies want to help people, but they also want to make money. And so if they make a drug and they patent it in today's health insurance paradigm, they can charge lots of money for it. But if there's only one person to sell that drug to, the federal government's health insurance program, then they have much less leverage over how much they can charge for it, right? Other things about single payer? I think that's a good batch of things. Okay, what is the school to prison pipeline? Provide examples of at least 3 factors that contribute to it. Yeah.
Before we go on to the next
Yeah.
question, when you're asking like provide at least 3 examples, does that mean like 3 examples of pros and cons? Like
I'll be
pros
clear.
and-
I'll be clear in the
Okay.
example. Yeah. Okay, school to prison pipeline. What is it? Yeah.
It's the criminalization of students, generally younger students, specifically students with disabilities, LGBT students, and students of color.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. That's a great definition, right? So, the school-based criminalization of minority and marginalized populations that often provides a kind of crack into the juvenile justice and then later the adult criminal justice system, right? So what are some examples of this, the factors that contribute to this? So we watched that movie, remember, about a girl? Yeah.
Suspension contributes to it. Teachers that lack multicultural education training contributes to it. And lack of resources in the schools also contributes to it.
Those are great points, yeah. So, discrimination and suspensions and expulsions, right? So we know that racial minorities are more likely, racial ethnic minorities are more likely to be suspended than expelled. This starts as early as daycare, right? We know that people with disabilities are more likely to face suspension. So those are really important factors for sure. Other ones? Yeah.
There's something about the presence of police and
Yeah.
metal detectors and other things like that.
Yes.
It
Yeah.
leads to like a mindset.
Right. So this idea of kind of criminalizing the school environment itself, right? So which schools have metal detectors at the door? Which schools have school resource officers that can make arrests, right? These are criminalizing normal child behavior within the school context. And that's a very direct pipeline, right? So if you are arrested in school, that's a direct pipeline to the juvenile justice system.
Own race bias,
Yep, race bias, yeah, yeah.
or better understood, like in-group favoritism. There's a speaker that just came to the U of I of saying like why we need equity literacy, not cultural competence, and saying like cultural competence doesn't do anything for us if we're not looking at equity, and coming down like cultural competence isn't going to do anything about you not understanding the mannerisms and behaviors of someone who looks different than you, and not being able to understand that's like those are the same mannerisms of people that look like you.
Right, right. Yeah, that's very interesting. That's a good point. Right. Yeah. We talked about how like in charter schools, like one of the things that we teach is like emphasizes like, you know, eye contact and obedience. These are culturally cultural factors, right? Things that dominant groups want to see in others.
That's that. Concerted cultivation versus
Natural.
something achievement.
Natural attainment and growth. Right? Natural, yeah. Yeah. So concerted cultivation, remember, is the idea that middle class parents want to cultivate their children. They encourage them to question authority, encourage them to participate in enrichment activities, right? This kind of idea of enrichment. And the natural something of growth is this idea that working and low-income parents value obedience in children. That they follow the rules, that they follow authority, that they are able to be by themselves quietly, that kind of thing. Yeah.
What does that have to do with the school to prison pipeline?
Well, Paul is making the point that it's a similar idea in that, well, it's okay if I make it, say what you were making?
Yeah.
That's something like requiring eye contact in a charter school for low-income kids, right? Is a dominant group preference in kind of interaction. And so, if you don't do that kind of thing, it's viewed as, it's criminalized, right? If you can assimilate into the dominant group's view of what is good behavior, then it may not be.
And it's like that notion that we have a lot of charter schools that are geared towards populations that are minorities, and within those charter schools we're teaching you to be governed, and when you have schools that are out in suburbs or anywhere else, we're teaching them to be governors.
Okay. So we talked about discrimination in terms of suspensions and expulsions, right? Starting early in life. We talked about criminalization of schools themselves, right? So metal detectors, school resource officers. And the last one is criminalization of kind of, or the disproportionate enforcement of statutory offenses. So truancy, fighting in school, these kinds of things where racial and ethnic minorities are punished much more severely for statutory offenses than other groups, right? So in the movie we watched, remember the teenager gets into a fight in school and is sent to a separate new school for disruptive kids, right? That's this kind of first step in this pipeline towards juvenile justice system. Okay, what is the Every Student Succeeds Act, and what are three major differences between ESA and NCLB?
It de-emphasizes standardized testing and test scores.
Yep. So ESSA de-emphasizes standardized testing.
What do you mean by that?
So NCLB, the No Child Left Behind Act, sought to measure student achievement through standardized tests. They wanted school districts and states to prove that kids were learning similar things across states. They wanted everyone to prove that graduation in Alabama meant the same thing as graduation in New York. And so they tried to institute a number of nationwide standardized tests to prove that schools were teaching what they said they were teaching. ESSA says, walks back from that and says, no, states can have decision making over what they think what they think it means, for example, to be a high school graduate, what you need to know. And so it's less of a nationwide standardized testing regime and more of a state-based testing regime.
Something about like skills-based where we can train you for like a trade.
Yep, so the ESSA also emphasizes non-academic paths. Oh my God. Non-academic paths, right? So for instance, it provides funding for skills-based and job training programs for primary school. And the last one is that ESSA, or not the last one, but another one is that ESSA provides money and funding and also incentives for low-income schools who have poor outcomes to get money to improve themselves rather than being closed.
For that second one, is that self-selecting or is that just another form of a tracking system?
Which one?
Getting into skill-based, like say it's like, oh, you're
How
not
is that implemented?
well, like previously, you look at a kid and it's like, oh, well, you're not doing very well in
Yeah.
STEM, so we're gonna put you on a track system for
Right.
And it's like industrial arts.
Right, right. I don't know how it's implemented. I don't know whether, so I don't know whether the federal government mandates how that money gets spent, like in that way or not, or if it's up to states to decide, or districts to decide.
So just to be clear, can you list them? You said, NCLB measures for standardized tests nationwide to prove everyone's learning the same. ESSA emphasized non-academic, learning, and they did something else.
And also de-emphasize, standardized testing.
And then the last one was, ESSA made sure that, minorities could get money to,
It provided funds to schools in low-income areas that had, poor performance. Kids' school performance, right? For those schools to improve rather than being closed down.
so by that last one, you mean, they will be funding money for better books?
I don't know what the law said how they have to spend the money.
Is it like the charter school system?
No, not charter exactly. So it's just like, you have a poor performing school, under No Child Left Behind, you were likely to be closed down. Under ESSA, you are now there is a pathway that exists for you to receive new federal funds to try and become a better school rather than being a school that gets shut down. I don't know what that means. I doubt that the federal law says money can only be used in these ways. I think it's probably some at a different level of government.
So they're funded just to potentially keep the school open?
Open and improved. So another short answer question, as you guys are all here, that I might put on the test would be about the earned income tax credit. I think it's really interesting. So just know a little bit about the ITC also.
About what?
About the earned income tax credit, the ITC. So I'm gonna put on 4 short answer questions. Some will be drawn from the ones here, some will be drawn from questions that I have not told you about. And I was just hinting that one of those that's not listed here that may be on the test would be about the earned income tax credit. So there will be 4 options, you'll choose 2.
Will we be, so we come back from break on the 1st, and then we have class the 3rd and 5th. That's when we'll be doing.
We're gonna be doing testimonies. I don't think we're gonna be able to get all our testimonies in one day, so I'll reserve some time to do
And then the exam is on the 10th or the 12th?
on the 10th, right? Yeah. We 11th is the last of the classes.
Okay,
Okay.
so if we finish testimonies on early, can we review again?
Yes, and I will also offer time outside of class to do review.
Okay.